Okay, cool.
All right. Hello. Well,
Hello.
we are excited to have Mark Clarin here, the winemaker at McGrail Vineyards. Mark, welcome. I know we've had a chance to talk once before, but this time we're recording it so folks can see it whenever they want.
Right on. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, the reason what brought me to talking with you and exploring McGrail Vineyards is that the wine and food group that I do called Wine Pairing Weekend decided to do a focus on Livermore Valley, as I learned has a lot of history making wine, but a lot of folks don't know it, at least relative to some other of your California neighbors. So we'd love you to start out by just giving us a little overview of Livermore Valley, kind of where it is on the map, some of the characteristics when it comes to the wines being made there in the terroir would be a great place to start.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, Livermore Valley is about 40 miles southeast of San Francisco, the city of, and and the valley itself, it's over some very small mountain range or hills, you know, to the east, and the excuse me, the valley itself runs east to west, and I think that's unique in
Mhm.
California. Most of them run north and south, so ours is east to west. So we get a lot of influence from the San Francisco Bay and the breezes from the west, and then to the east we have the next set of hills over. When you get over those, you get into the Great Central Valley. That's actually quite hot in the summertime, and the
Mhm.
heat rises and it pulls the air from San Francisco Bay right through our valley. And we also have, besides grapevines, we also have windmills. So we
Huh.
have a big, the Altamont Pass is a big wind factory. So and that what that does is it basically cools us off in the evenings and keeps us a little bit cooler. And then we get fog overnight, fog, and in the morning it's not unusual in the summer to wake up to an overcast day, so it's kind of cool. But it's great for grape growing, and so we like it. And there's like over 50 wineries now in Livermore. Back again, like 100 years ago, there was about 40 or 50 wineries, and then Prohibition came along, and I think Wente and Kincannon are the only two that survived that, and they survived it by making wine for the church.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes it's been so long ago you forget about the impact of prohibition, but if you have history, it definitely had an impact. Thankfully, at least there were a couple of those wineries that were able to keep going.
yeah. The other thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't realize is that Wente started selling fruit to get the Gallo Company. Actually started during Prohibition, started selling fruit uh, to uh, to families in the East. New York,
Hmm.
Philadelphia,
Huh.
Chicago, etc. Because even during Prohibition, you could make 200 gallons a year for yourself,
Oh,
tax free. And during that time, there was a lot of European immigrants coming in, and they were like, "What do you mean I can't drink wine?"
right.
Yeah. So, well, we'll just make it. So they were
Perfect.
making wine.
Huh.
So the Wenties did that, and the Wenties also diversified into cattle and other things, and they still do that. They're still fairly diverse. And
Oh,
then Concannon eventually sold. So Wenty's still family owned. Concannon sold to various different wine,
yeah.
companies over the years, and it's sort of changed hands.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So from what you said, I sort of took that and was a fairly recent resurgence, and I'm curious what drove that, and
Oh,
that's
here in Livermore, yeah.
yes, yeah.
So when I first started I started in '79, and there were four or maybe six wineries in
Hmm.
Livermore.
Yeah.
And it was that way, because Wente at the time was basically a white wine company, Chardonnay, or, well, they made Pinot Chardonnay, I remember, but Gray Riesling and LeBlanc de Blancs and Chablis were their big, the big items, and
Mhm.
Concannon was Petite Syrah and a little Cabernet Sauvignon, etc. And there's a long history with Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon in the Livermore Valley,
Mhm.
but it wasn't until I would say the late '80s and early '90s when what the the Wente family created what's called the South Livermore Plan area plan, which was I mean they helped create it. They there were plenty of people that tried to do that, but
Mhm.
they were trying to preserve vineyard land, and so they were selling 20-acre parcels
Mhm.
of vineyards to folks, and they limited the building envelope to 2 acres, and the idea was to sort of get boutique wineries to start up, which it kind of worked,
Nice.
and so we have people like the Wood family that they own one of those pieces, and they have their place now, and then there are just plenty of others that just sort of popped up and started um, producing wines, and so it's been sort of this strange renaissance, and it started I would say in the '90s, and then 2000 it kind of exploded. But
Yeah.
here we are 20 years later after that, after the explosion,
Mm.
and now it just seems like we keep gaining wineries over the years. Somebody else goes, hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's great. It's great to hear. Sometimes people are able to actually come up with a vision and plan like that and see it actually work. But I can only imagine when you describe how close you are to San Francisco, if you didn't have something like that in place, we probably wouldn't be looking at nice vineyard land there, but a lot of housing or something.
well, that's just it. I mean, I think the idea was to preserve the viticulture in Livermore Valley because it is a very special place to grow grapes.
Hmm.
And and it's a struggle. I mean, it's not, we're still trying to, keep all the balls in the air. In the meantime, the McGrail family, they bought a like a 25-acre piece of property and planted it to because they're good friends with Phil Wente,
Hmm.
and he sort of talked them into it, and they weren't really going to get into a winery at all, and then eventually they just sort of decided that they would get into it, and then they encouraged Heather McGrail to come home and run the winery, and she has ever since, and that was like 2007 ish,
Hmm.
2006, 2007, and
Yep.
I came along kind of in that time frame with my consulting expertise, and I taught Ginger and Heather how to top barrels and things like that.
Yeah.
And then eventually they needed a winemaker, and I said, well, I'd like to be that winemaker, and here we are. We're almost like we're doing about 7,000, 7,500 cases a year now, which before we started, the first years were less than 1,000 cases. So
Wow.
we've grown, and we also purchased another vineyard site. So, things are going well for us.
That's excellent. Yeah, tell us this. So let's dive in a little more to McGrail Vineyards. So you told us a little bit about the origins. Give us a little more in terms of, where you are, what the terrain is like there, where you are in the on the map, and then let's get into some of the wines that you're making.
Okay, yeah. So, well, we are in sort of the southeastern part of the Livermore Valley, up on a hillside. I think the elevation, it's above 1,000 feet, I believe, but it's a gentle sloping, similar to the picture I see behind
Oh, okay.
behind
Yeah.
you.
Nice.
Uh, you know, as far as the slope, it's kind of hard to tell, um, but we don't have the big pond down at the bottom of the hill, but we have the thing that we do have is we have that's a beautiful view, and we have some beautiful views that as
Hmm.
we look west and north toward Mount Diablo to the north, northwest, and then toward Pleasanton Ridge to the exactly due west, and and then kind of overlooks the city of Livermore. And yeah, it's really beautiful at night when the lights are on. And but even in the daytime, I mean, there's a lot of vineyard land that we look across, and it's just a beautiful view. And I think it's one of the advantages we have. People come to visit us, and then they sit on the what we call the panoramic patio and just sip wine and bring their charcuterie or whatever they bring, little snacks to eat. And sometimes we have I mean, we have a lot of events. We have food trucks. We have a lot of, really cool things. We have a lot of music things on the weekends. And, just, I think we had 700 people on Mother's Day
Wow. Hey, that's a
picnicking.
good Mother's Day gift for
Yeah,
yeah.
picnicking on the lawn, which was, pretty crazy. It was a lot of, but we have a big property, so it's very spread out. So I couldn't believe when they told me that number, because it did. I'm sure it did to the folks that were working the pouring behind the bar.
Right.
Probably felt that way, but for me, just sort of being part of it, walking around, it didn't feel crowded. Like I'm thinking of those concerts I used to go to as a kid at like the you know, in San Francisco or, in Oakland, where you're jammed like,
Oh yeah.
it wasn't like that at all. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's
normally we're not that way, I mean, that's
mhm.
just a special occasion.
But it does sound like both from that description and I know on the website and when we talked before, you do a lot of events. So it seems like the winery's focused on getting people into the winery to enjoy your wines and buy some. Is that the best way? People visiting is probably the best way, and then
Absolutely.
elaborate on how people could get a hold of your wines.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely kind of the business model is we have a tasting room and we encourage people to come visit us. And I think once you visit us, the wines, I mean, it's easy for me to say I like the wine. That's my wine style. My winemaking style is I make what I like and to drink.
Yeah, right.
Uh, so that's so it's easy for me to stand here and say I like the wine. I do think it is good wine. Um, but I think even more important is I think our the family themselves, and it just sort of trickles down to all the staff members. Is they're just such a wonderful family, and they make you feel so welcoming.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
and the staff the same thing. And so overall, I think in general people have a good experience. And then we have a wine club,
yeah,
and if you join the wine club, then you get a discount on events and the wine and all the things, and you get a little bit you know special treatment, and people really like that. And then we do sell wine locally to restaurants and that kind of thing, but everything's direct to the consumer or direct to the out of the winery. So we
yeah,
we don't have any distribution, and so it's difficult to find us anywhere but locally. I mean, we
yeah.
are trying to, spread our wings a little bit, but what I mean by that is like San Jose.
Right, right.
All the way to
Okay.
San Jose, it's like
Yeah.
35 miles away, so but to get back east or anything, we do ship back east to wine club members.
Mhm.
You can get it, and you can go to the website and you can buy it as long as you're in one of the states that we can legally ship to.
Right.
So
Right. Which fortunately has expanded a bit over the years. I know there's still some states that have issues, like in Massachusetts. For a while, I had to. I don't know if I should be saying this when I'm recording, but here it goes. I had to,
yeah,
if I wanted to order something from your winery, I have to have it shipped to a friend's house in New Hampshire and then,
right.
connect
And
with
then
him to get it. But now we can get it here in Massachusetts, fortunately.
right. Well, that was, I mean, I think a lot of that was going on, and so it's, and I mean, I don't understand I don't understand any of the thought behind, this is all still from leftover from Prohibition, which
Right.
is like 100 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Really.
and then, really basically, I mean, I don't, I shouldn't say this either because we're recording it, but my theory is that prohibition was really great for a certain, you know, person that, or certain people that had I can make a lot of money doing, selling this
Right.
product illegally.
Yeah.
And when they made it legal again, they said, well, we still want our cut.
Yeah.
So, fine, you're going to legalize it, but I still want, so they created this three-tier system and this,
Hmm.
distribution network and so, and so there's a lot of people that make a lot of money selling wine. So,
Right.
and I get it. I understand they want to protect their gig. Um, I
Like,
just, unfortunately, we're not big enough for a distributor to even
yeah.
consider us, so.
And I think, and that's part of why you do programs like we're doing now, because, for a person that, really enjoys wine, wants to try some good quality wine and also support, a smaller business as opposed to a huge conglomerate.
Right, right.
Seeking out a winery like McGrail is a good way. So we should talk about those wines specifically. And
Yeah, for
we
sure.
chatted a little bit last time we connected on the Instagram Live, but I told you at the time I had a glass of Chardonnay in my hand, and I think it looks like you might have Chard or another white wine
I
of yours
no, I
around.
do I do have Chardonnay in my
Nice. I really like that Chardonnay. I believe it was the 2021 that I had, if that sounds right. And
right,
as I told you, I was really struck by the freshness of it. I got tropical fruit was the first thing that came to my mind, and those
for
aren't
sure.
words that typically, you would suggest
With
when you're
Chardonnay,
tasting a
yeah.
typical California Chardonnay. So tell us, about the more about that Chardonnay and how you make it.
Okay, for sure. Well, so I do think that the tropical fruit comes from the vineyard, and so it's a clone four Chardonnay, which is the one of the Wente clones, and we planted it in 2016, and so uh, what I do is I barrel ferment 100% barrel ferment all my Chardonnays, and then I have two different wine style Chardonnays. We have the family Chardonnay, which is what we're talking about,
Mm,
and then I also have what's known as the Charlie Ray Chardonnay, which is 100% malolactic. With the family Chardonnay, I inhibit malolactic on about 25%, maybe 30% of the barrels,
mm.
and I do that on purpose to sort of keep the freshness of the vineyard, of the fruit in the wine, and so that but there is some creaminess, right? There is some
Mhm. Yeah,
nice
yeah,
mouthfeel and creaminess,
definitely.
um, and not quite buttery, but more of a
Hmm.
creamy character, and
Yeah,
like almost like a lemon cream pie, or
yeah,
something.
yeah. I can.
Uh,
Hmm.
but but I do think that Livermore Valley, for some reason, is the white grapes tend to get this sort of tropical characteristic, and I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah.
Uh, but I do get a little bit of peach in it. Like you can soul search for the wine if you really,
Hmm.
get a little bit of white peach
Hmm.
or something like that in there. But I definitely agree with you. There's definitely a tropical, pineapple, grapefruit type flavor that's I think is very nice. So,
Yeah, I really liked it. Definitely good. And for high quality California Chardonnay, from a family vineyard like yours, the price is, decent. I think it's low 30s or something that retails for,
right,
which is
right.
not bad at all for. I mean, you pay double that for a wine that's not going to be any better if not.
Oh, you can always spend more money. That's for sure.
That's not a problem.
Yeah, yeah. What the heck, right?
I think I told you I'm into food and wine pairing. I'm curious. I'll tell you what I served with it after, but I want to, what are some things you like to eat with that Chardonnay?
Well, I was thinking about this. I for some reason I always think of of like a chicken, dish, like a, buttered, something where you kind of lather butter all over the chicken and then maybe
Oh
use
yeah.
a little lemon,
Yep. Yep.
lemon and salt and pepper and all that kind of thing. But then I'm thinking that this wine will, hold up to like a nice pork loin or something like that
Hmm.
as well. So I
Yep.
could see going either way. And then of course I like seafood where like those big shrimps or whatever, I could see like a something like that would be really nice.
Yeah,
Even
that
maybe
sounds
even a
good.
Cajun spicy, maybe even a little bit of spice because I think the wine will hold up to spicy food. So
Yeah, so I had it with the main dish I served it with was a pulled pork that sort of had like a
oh,
barbecue flavor, and it worked
there
quite
you
well.
go.
Worked
There you
quite
go.
well for just like you were saying, with not super spicy, but definitely some flavorful spices in there. Not
Yeah.
hot spice per se, but flavorful, and definitely it had the substance to stand up to the pork, which isn't always the case with the white wine. But then also, I always like when I have a dish like that, like a wine that's got some nuanced flavor profile kind of matches nicely when you got a lot of flavors like that pork had. So that was very good. And I also before I had served dinner was just nibbling on some Gruyere cheese with
Oh,
as it's cooking with it, and that was a nice combo.
that'll work. Yeah. Cheese, it's funny how wine and cheese, right? It seems like it works. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, let's
cool.
switch to your Cabernet because I know that's kind of your sort of it's as at least looking at the website that's the flagship wine I guess is
That's
your cabs.
absolutely. That's what we do. So, yeah, I mean, we do a lot of things now, but the genesis of the brand was, the Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve.
Yep.
And so which Cabernet was it that we were
Yeah,
doing?
I then now I realize I'm gonna check real quick.
Because was it the Good Life or
No,
was
that
it the
doesn't
Reserve?
sound right. It was a reserve of some sort.
Yeah, it's the Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve. That's what I recall.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what it was. And yeah.
Yeah, so genesis of the brand. This is, they when Jim and Ginger first planted the vineyard, Jim said, "I just want to plant Cabernet. I want to do something and try to get it right before I expand into anything else."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and so Cab Reserve, thus the Cab Reserve was born, and and basically we would pour the wine in the tasting room, and then you came in and that was the only wine we had, and then you'd
Yeah.
pour it through an aerator, close one eye, try it again, kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
And but it's a wine that continues to stand out, for us. Um, and in 2012, I think our '08 vintage won the sweepstakes award in the Chronicle wine tasting.
Oh, I saw that. Excellent.
Yeah, so I mean it was, and then I feel like we're consistently in the 90s, as far as scores from like the Wine Enthusiast and places like that. So I mean, it makes me feel good
Yeah.
that other people seem to like it, right? So, but basically, it's really about farming, and then in so we really spend a lot of time. Like I just got through shoot thinning the vineyard last week, um, and so we spend the extra money on fertilization, compost,
Hmm.
and and then controlling growth, because shoot thinning really helps. I can't believe like last week the main shoots were like say this,
Yeah.
and we shoot thinned, and now they're like way like I need to move the wires all of a sudden, like
That
I
fast in a week.
yeah, it's
Wow.
crazy. So it makes a difference, and getting that shoot growth, and then I can see the little future clusters sitting there,
Mm.
and they all look really good. And so is hopefully we'll get fruit set and all that. But then let's just fast forward to harvest. We hand harvest and we sort in the winery, we sort in the vineyard in the sense that we'll thin fruit if we need to.
Yep.
That's I call that sorting. And actually, shoot thinning is sorting, right? You're sorting
Hmm.
out the growth.
Right.
But get it in the vineyard. I mean, get it in the winery and sort the fruit, and we destem to fermenter, and I ferment for I cold soak for a couple of days, because I think that helps extract color and
Hmm.
um, we tend to really get really good color with our Cabernets,
Yeah.
and, and then ferment it dry. I mean, nothing special. I'm fermenting it in like tanks, stainless steel fermenters and pumping over and all those things that pretty much everybody does, unless
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
punching bins down
Yeah.
or bubbling air through. There's so many different methods, but I just pump it over and then I press it off, settle it for a couple of days, and put it into barrels, and it ages in barrels for 30 months.
Oh, okay. And that
And
really imparts a lot of good complex flavors that are.
yeah, we use about 75 on the reserve. We use about 75% new oak,
Hmm.
uh, and then on some of our other cabs, we'll do 100% new oak, and then some of
Hmm.
the others will use more experienced oak.
Yeah.
But um, but I feel like the I learned when I went to Bordeaux many years ago, because at the time, everybody's talking about over oaking wine and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I learned that if you grow the fruit well and you have enough intensity in the fruit itself,
Hmm.
that oak is it's actually a spice that is enhancing, like it's like putting salt and pepper on a steak, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right. Right.
it just enhances that flavor. And if you have a wine that maybe doesn't have that to start with, then it's easy to over oak. And then
Hmm.
also, if you use barrels like the ones behind me here,
Yeah.
in this picture that's a pretend picture, but it is my winery.
Right. Right.
um, but if you use barrels as opposed to sticks and chips and all those things, and I'm not saying there's not a place for those things, but
Hmm.
that's what we're doing. That's kind of why our wine's a little more expensive than
Hmm.
Joe Blow down the street that does sticks
Sure.
and chips and all that.
Yeah.
But I think it makes a difference in a positive way.
Yeah, I
And
like the way you described it because, and thinking back to tasting the cab, I can definitely see what you're describing because definitely that nice bold fruit. And I definitely was thinking, okay, this has got the spice notes going on. And now, sort of your
yeah,
your explanation provides a nice context to what I was tasting in the glass. But, I hadn't heard it quite put that way, what some of those lower price, lower quality wines, especially a cab or something. Why I really dislike that over oakiness, and I hadn't really thought about.
it's kind of papery or
Yeah.
fake. It just tastes like yeah, pencil shavings or
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think yeah, everybody has their own method. And those wines sell way more than mine do, so
Yeah.
they're doing something right. I'm not here to criticize anybody else's wine necessarily, but I just like it this way. And when you're in a first growth chateau in Bordeaux and they're showing you what they do, I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Because
Right.
I've done all the other things. I've been in this business over 40 years. I've seen there's a lot of different ways you can micro ox it, put
Yeah.
a bunch of staves in a tank and micro ox it and try to make it as close to a barrel. And people do that and do a
Right.
really good job at it. But I just like this better.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. That actually might be a good thing to sort of some final question line of questioning for you. You've been, as you said, you've been in the business a long time. I'm kind of a two-parter, sort of what has kept you in it so long, and sort of what do you see, on the horizon for, say the next 10 years 10 years, and for either wine in general, at least wine in Livermore. Take your pick.
I'm trying them both because because
Yeah, please.
because it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly.
Um, well, it's interesting. I found that the wine business has been such an interesting thing for me. But I fell into the business. I basically got a job when I was looking for a job
Hmm.
at Wente Brothers winery in Livermore, uh, and I didn't know anything about wine except for the obvious, right?
Yeah,
Back then it was you know Chablis and Burgundy,
right.
Hardy Burgundy and things like that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
big whatever you could buy, or what was it, Matus, and like there were all these things that I didn't even particularly care for at the time, so I
Right.
didn't really know. And so the first day of work, I was like learning so much,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow, this is really cool." And
Yep.
so one of the things I love about the wine production side is that your job changes throughout the year. So, like let's say the first of the year is, September 1st harvest, let's say, approximately. So you're harvesting fruit, you're processing the fruit, you're fermenting, you're doing all those things. And that's like about 2 months of that.
Yeah.
And then you're, barreling everything down, and that's about a month, give or take. And then, you're sort of, you might do some blending in the winter time, getting ready for bottling and,
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. And so, and you're doing a little filtration maybe, and then you're bottling, and then you're maintaining, we do a lot of topping, you have to top the barrels and stuff
Hmm.
like that, but like every day is a little bit different, so you
Yeah.
don't really have, I always thought about, because I was a hod carrier for a bricklayer when I was you know really young,
Yeah.
before Wente. In fact, the job I had just before I got hired at Wente, and it was such a physically difficult job and pretty boring and never changed. Like every
Right.
day
Right.
you mix the mortar, you slop it in a wheelbarrow, you chuck it, up, shoveling it up the
Yeah.
scaffold to the next level, and then you got to bring all the bricks to the bricklayer, and I imagine that if I had stayed with that, eventually maybe I would have been a bricklayer, but
Right.
even that, you know
Yeah.
brick, tap, tap, whatever. Um, I can't imagine doing that for my whole life. So that's one of the things that I think kept me in this business
Right.
all this time. And then I actually, my job, I started at the very bottom in the wine business,
Hmm.
and now I'm back on the bottom. No, I'm kidding. Uh, no, I mean, I started at the very bottom, and now, I basically have the best job in the world, in my opinion, because, I'm working with a family that has supported me fully in this sense that, yes, I have to make Cabernet Sauvignon and I have to make Chardonnay, and but they've also let me bring things in, like I'm the one that sort of brought Sauvignon Blanc into our portfolio. And then Heather and I we've since the very beginning, we worked together on, um, ideas for making Cabernet Sauvignon a little more interesting
Mm.
uh, for our club, so that we're not just selling every 3 months the same wine to you,
Right. Right.
and but I mean, we still have, as a winemaker, you want to do everything, right? You want to, like, I want to make every type of grape and, whatever. But realistically, that doesn't make sense from a branding standpoint. But
Right.
so, I mean, that's why I think I'm still here. And I went from being I was making, millions of gallons a year type thing,
Hmm.
to, like I don't know. I don't even know, but I'm doing like, I can do it in tonnage easier, like, doing like 20,000 tons a year of fruit, and now I do like 150,
Okay.
so it's like, oh my God, it's just
Wow.
so much nicer because when you're doing 20,000 tons, like, you know, 19,500 of them are like a blur. There's only a
Yeah.
few that you
Right.
remember, like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that was a really good, truckload of fruit,
Right.
so, I just kind of, I know that, from a career standpoint, if I, wanted to, at this point, I'm not worried about it, but there was a time when I really wanted to chase the dollars and all that. Um, you that's where you want to be, but I love what I do. I love this family, and I love I basically, it's me. When you're tasting the wines, it's my fault. So if you like it, great. If you don't, it's my fault. I'll tell you that it is. So
Oh, yeah, the buck stops with you, and it
yeah.
was I really enjoyed the lineup I tasted, and it's nice to have that alignment, I guess, if you're kind of trying to be a conscious consumer, I guess, of something, to think about, quality in the glass, but it starts with, real people,
Mhm.
in a physical play, a patch of land, it's kind of nice to see that, hear that story behind it, and it's not just one of those made up things slapped on a label. It's it comes across very authentically hearing you talk about it.
Well, right on. Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's real. I mean, I do my share of the grunt work. People always say, um, one of my favorites was years ago. I was on a tour. I was giving a tour of the property with one of our tasting room staff members at the time, and some folks, and he was just kind of cruising along just to kind of learn a little bit, about
Mhm.
who we are and what we're doing. And this some guy says to me, uh, so, like, you work like 2 weeks a year. So what do you do the rest of the year, right? And of course, I just rolled with that and said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "Shh, don't tell anybody," right? But the truth is, there's a lot of work,
Hmm.
and my friend, the staff member, he was just part time, and he had a regular job too. This was kind
Yeah.
of a weekend warrior kind of thing.
Right.
And a couple years later, he said, so what's going on? You're here. It's like whatever, whatever. And I said, well, now I'm up to 4 weeks a year.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's funny.
but but yeah, no, there's a lot of work to do. It's not just sitting around sipping wine and tasting, and there's a lot of cleaning. Cleaning
Yeah.
is like and those types of things. So if you like to, I remember when I got hired at Wente, that everybody that I talked to, all the bosses, were saying, winemaking, first you make a mess, then you clean it up. that was
Yeah.
that was the mantra, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. It's like that's what you do.
Well, great. Well, it's been great chatting with you. Like I said, I enjoyed the wines, enjoyed learning more about the winery and your background. So we will. Oh, by the way, I meant to say this earlier, but for folks picking this up, we are recording this in mid-May. I meant to say that right after describing where the how big the shoots are, but so
Oh,
that's
right.
still pretty early in your season.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
things are growing fast, and so the so people can look forward to hopefully the 2023 will be a good vintage and it's been
I'm
good so.
I'm thank you. I'm bullish, with all the rainfall we got last year, things are looking great.
Oh, good,
Really,
good.
really great. So,
Well, excellent. Well, I'll look forward then to a 2023 McGrail Vineyards wine in a couple of years for sure.
all right. All right. Well, it's a
All right.
pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too. Cheers, Mark.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye.